Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Business Spotlight. Today we have great pleasure in introducing the Managing Director of Cherwell Laboratories. This gentleman is Andy Whittard. Andy is the second generation leader of this business, having taken over some years ago from his late father, Lawrence, whom founded the business in 1971. Andy and the team, following in Lawrence's footsteps, are world-class experts in microbiology products and services. And I am looking forward to learning about what Andy and everybody are doing in that sector. So, Andy, with great warmth, we welcome you to the Business Spotlight. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Alice. Nice to be here.
You're welcome. Why don't you tell us a little more about your business, Andy? We'd love to know more about what environmental monitoring and process validation means. It sounds very interesting.
Thank you. Yes. So as you say, Cherwell is a second generation business. It was founded by my father in 1971. So we're in our 52nd year and still going strong, which is great to be able to report.
Absolutely.
We operate under sort of a banner of clean room microbiology solutions, and that includes the two things that you mentioned there, environmental monitoring and process validation. Basically, Cherwell is actually a manufacturing business, and we manufacture, pack and supply to the pharmaceutical sector agar plates. So these are the plastic Petri dishes that have jelly in them for growing bacteria on. And we also manufacture liquid products as well. And these are used by our clients to check their clean rooms are clean, which they have to do an awful lot of from a compliance point of view, because obviously they're manufacturing drugs for patient use.
Fascinating. So I have memories now of being about 13 in a chemistry lab back at school, back in 1736 or whatever it was, when they educated me. And of course, that's when most people watching this interview will perhaps what they will relate to. So it's interesting to understand that very basic entry level experience translates all the way through to the very pinnacle of the industries that you're supporting. Is there a specific market? Forgive me if that's the wrong phrase, Andy, but maybe a genre or a sector within the greater market that you would specialize in?
There is actually, and you're quite right. Most people's recollections of what we sort of comically call jelly plates are from school days of sticking your fingers in them and seeing what grows, and which is quite normal. Our skin carries a high concentration of natural flora and fauna, so quite normal. So agar plates are used in a wide variety of applications, and it goes from sort of one end of the scale, which is your sort of hospital laboratory, where they're doing analysis to try and work out what somebody might be infected with.
Okay.
It's very much the clinical sector.
Yeah.
All the way up to the other end of the scale, which is where we operate, which is sort of the industrial sector, which is where people who are running clean rooms are using our products, as I said, for monitoring purposes. And we specialize in that end of that sector. So the clinical sector is a very different type of product, very different range of products, very different demands from clients and everything in that end. And others are very good at that space, and it's not an area that we focus on.
So one of the principles that often comes out in the Business Spotlight interviews is the need for targeted marketing and targeted approach to a marketplace, and that's obviously woven deeply into the fabric of what you're doing here with Cherwell Laboratories. Did Lawrence enter the market in that sector, or has that evolved over time, Andy?
Like most SME businesses, we've evolved over time. So Lawrence was actually a veterinary surgeon by profession.
I did read that on the website, actually.
And came out of small animal practice and got involved in doing consultancy work, and set up Cherwell Laboratories as a veterinary diagnostic laboratory, hence the name. Cherwell Laboratories doesn't really sound like it applies to what we do nowadays, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were a diagnostic lab to start with, and then over the years we diversified.
Sure.
Mainly because of Lawrence's entrepreneurship, if I'm honest. We got involved in supplying products to people, which then led to us being asked to manufacture the consumable to go with that product, and that was the forerunner of what is now basically, as I said, a manufacturing business. But through that period of time, and certainly when I took on being the MD role, which was over 15 years ago now, we really sort of focused down on a particular part of the market, recognizing that it's an area that we perhaps understood better, and it's an area where we could apply our knowledge and some expertise and abilities into that space, rather than trying to supply the whole market. As you say, being niche and targeted is very important.
1,000,000%. And how do you ensure that you stand out in that arena? What makes Cherwell Laboratories different, Andy?
I think this comes down to being partly honest with yourselves about what you're good at and what you're not good at. And in our space, we've got some very big competitors, some big corporate international businesses.
Okay.
And clearly they can do stuff better than we can in certain areas. So for example, producing, really high volumes of particular products is where they're going to be more focused. We're more agile and flexible and be able to supply a broader range of products in a broader range of capacity as well.
Yeah.
So to satisfy not only customers' sort of large volume needs, of which there are some, but also they have small volume needs for certain products to do certain tests or work or what have you. And our big competitors obviously are not so interested in that. So yeah, I think you've got to be honest with yourself and say, actually, we're not good at that. Let's not try and be that. Let's try and be what we are good at, and understand what those things are at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a business that is concentrating on identifying its differentiation point around what shall we say here? You mentioned the word niche earlier on, bespoke niche, high quality. It feels like that. It's look, we're never gonna compete with the big guys on volume and price or whatever their specialization is. But what we can give you is this, and this, and it will be backed up by first class service. That's an interesting approach that all of the businesses we deal with, Andy, and that we support and that we talk to on the Business Spotlight are small to medium-sized businesses. So to a large degree, they're all facing similar challenges. It's interesting to understand how you sell your value to your client base. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, I think you touched on there, sort of excellent customer service is clearly a differentiator for any business in any market, in any environment, to be honest with you. We all recognize that when we receive it, and we all recognize it when it's really poor.
This is true.
So again, being clear about what it is that customers want. And I always think the biggest thing that any customer wants in that space is honesty and transparency, actually. And one of the things that I believe we're very good at is that level of transparency. This stuff goes wrong. But nobody's 100% perfect, regardless of what they might like to tell you or say in their marketing blurb. Things go wrong, and actually, when things go wrong, that sort of level of transparency, responsibility, is really important because people appreciate that. That's a key thing at the end of the day. You mentioned sort of bespoke and all that sort of thing. One of the things we are good at is tailoring our solutions for our clients. So again, not being a box shifter, being a solution provider. Even though we make a product, it's sometimes quite difficult to get people to sort of reflect and think about. It's not about selling products; about providing solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting, again, just to underline two things there: communication, positive or negative scenario, just communicate, right?
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
is totally with you there. Yeah, and I apologize for using the word bespoke to all of our listeners and all of our viewers and yourself, Andy, because bespoke is a word that, let's be honest, is really it's overused, it's cliched, all the rest of it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but at the end of the day, you know, to have a bespoke, what's the word I'm looking for here, Andy? Or to have an ability to create something that is unique to the client, to the customer, to the market, to the scenario, whatever phrase you want to call that, that's the key, isn't it? That's the key to being different, really. Andy, let's
Absolutely.
change.
Yeah.
Forgive me, you were going to, please carry on.
No, I was just going to agree that absolutely it is, and it's funny actually. We've been having this little purge of trying to get bespoke out of our sort of dialogue, if you like. I think it still appears on our website actually, which we must do something about, but more to be around tailored solutions. So that for me is all about understanding the challenges that our clients have,
Yeah.
how we can best help sort those out with them. And that, could be simple little things that you do at the end of the day. It hasn't necessarily been anything complicated. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, do you actually listen to your customers? Do you actually take on the feedback and actually integrate that into the service that you provide? There's an opportunity to be not bespoke but different, right? So yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, interesting stuff. There's something there as well. Just to say, we talk a lot in this program about taking taking the I out of marketing.
Yes.
So when we talk about bespoke, often we're talking about we, aren't we? So it's like, we are great at this and we can do this for you and yours, and we're able to be bespoke or whatever. In reality, that's not what your audience want to hear. They want to hear you, don't they? They want to talk to a business that is not talking we, but is talking you. That is, I think, I don't know what your view on that is, Andy, but for me, when I read marketing material that's plainly written to help me relate to what I want to hear, not what they want to tell me, that's a business that's got my attention.
Yes, no, I totally agree, actually. And one of our, one of our sort of successes, I think, and something that we're going to use more and more, has been our approach to marketing. So we use a inbound digital marketing technique. And we've also recently started adopting very much that view of looking at what the customer wants to know. There's a great book called "They Ask, You Answer" by Marcus Sheridan.
Absolutely.
Which really gets you. It's that classic. You don't really know your customer until you've worn their shoes, do you? So, so really trying to get into that. Bringing sales and marketing really closely together, because they should be really working as one, not as two silos, is also really important. So yeah, you got to know what your customers' struggles are before you can really help them, to be honest with you.
In other words, you have to, you got to ask the questions. You got to listen, right? So Marcus, you mentioned Marcus. I'm the one mentioning Marcus Sheridan's book. The reason being is very few people in reality have actually read it. And it's endemic. It's not just Marcus's book. It's the vast majority of small business owners suffer from I know, right? So they don't educate themselves. So what we have there in that book, and it's amazing that you've mentioned it. In my opinion, that's the best marketing book on the marketplace right now, and it has been since 2015-16 when Marcus wrote it, and I first stumbled across it. I sent a client away from a coaching session. Gentleman based his business not far away from you guys, actually, with some homework. And the homework was this: go away and find a book that you want to read. This was a marketing agency. This is a completely true story. A marketing agency, I won't mention the specifics because he's still a client, a friend of mine, and he'll be probably watching this program. His profit and loss account for the previous year had the grand sum total of £127 in it for his own marketing investment. Now work that one out for yourself. I couldn't believe it. So I said, okay, you go away and find a book and read a book that's going to give you some thoughts around applying what you're doing for your clients to your own business. And he came back with a book. And he said, I've read this book in the last 2 weeks since we spoke last, Ellis, on the last session. And it's an incredible little book. Here it is. And he gave me a copy of it. And it was called They Ask, You Answer. And it was a brand new book at that stage.
Yeah.
I've got to say, since then, Marcus has become a real ally and a friend of Power Play Coaching Limited. And we really do insist that all clients that we work with read that book. So congratulations on that one. Brilliant stuff. Andy, let's change tack now for a few minutes. Let's give our audience a slightly different insight into how Andy runs his business. What emphasis do you place on visualization, Andy? What in terms of how do you translate what you want from your business in the future into your business activity today?
That's a really interesting question. It's a real tough one to answer, actually, in all fairness. And I think there's only actually a small number of people who are really good at this. If you kind of, think of those, the Steve Jobs of this world, if you like, who were probably brilliant at it. I think creating a vision for your business is really important. And I think anything you can do to help build a picture, regardless of how big or small it is beneficial. One of the things that we try and do in our business is talk about that kind of purpose piece, our why, referring to Simon Sinek's book.
We are. Absolutely.
Because actually you want stuff that engages people. So, me standing up in a staff meeting and going, hey guys, we're going to have a great year next year because I want you all to make me rich. It's going to go down like a lead balloon, isn't it? Let's be honest.
That's what I'm doing wrong then, Andy.
Yeah.
Well,
So we talk about our purpose, and we talk about the supply chain that we're part of. And at the end of that supply chain is a patient. And we talk about this idea that, and it's actually what our purpose is, because one day it might be me and I want to be sure. And it's all about,
that's huge,
trying to get the guys on the shop floor, in customer support, in our engineering team, in our warehouse, whatever it might be, to understand that every single little thing that they do to ensure that we deliver an A-class product to our customer is all about that supply chain, because our clients are using our product to check their own clean rooms. And if our product doesn't work properly, then they might get a false answer, which might, and we're sort of pulling at sort of quite thin things here, might actually lead to the environment not being right when the drug was manufactured, which means the drug then goes to the health service, then goes to a patient, and there could be something wrong. So it's about being clear with everybody and saying, look, that's really important. And you might think that what you do today, every day, is a menial task, if you like, putting a label on a product. Picking the right product to put the right label on, for example, might seem a tedious job. Making sure the product's packed correctly, so when it goes to the customer, it's in A1 condition. It's all part of that supply chain. And as I say, at the end of that supply chain is a patient.
I don't think I've ever heard, to be quite candid here, I don't think I've ever heard of a better why than at the end of this process, not just our part of it, but the ultimate process is a patient. Wow. I mean, that is, it's monumentally powerful, Andy. Interesting. I was hearing there in your description a identity piece in reality. I was hearing values. I was hearing empowering belief systems. I was hearing skill sets. I was hearing all sorts of things that said, okay, this is a business that has a super clear identity, and it enjoys and is well versed at describing that, which is great. And I mean great when I say that, not good or very good. It's great. But let me come back to the question. Andy Whittard, the managing director, the second generation owner, if you like, of this business, leader of this business. How do you visualize what you're doing this for, Andy? And how do you translate that into your business?
I guess, it comes back to a subject we've kind of already touched on, I guess, and it's communication, isn't it? Ultimately. And it's been present in the business.
Okay.
And, I like to walk the business. I like to engage with people.
That's excellent.
I don't profess to be the best at doing that, if I'm honest with you, but I do what I can do. We haven't got to be experts in these things, have we? We just need to put effort in. One of the things that we do in the business, which I think is quite powerful as well, we do an orientation session with new employees. So after they've kind of done their induction and their kind of first few months with us, we like to put them through like a morning's orientation program. We're still catching up a little bit on that from all the lockdown hangover and everything, but we should be caught up by the end of this calendar year. And I do that. My operations director does that as well, and it's it's twofold really. Actually, one, it allows me to talk about those things in the business, to try and visualize that at the end of this there's a patient piece. But it also allows me to get to know those individuals as well a little bit, because we run a clean room manufacturing business. We have people inside a clean room ganged up who I don't see very often. I see them through a window, but don't have a chance to engage with them. So
that picture just became very clear to me there.
Yeah. So you can sometimes feel a bit isolated from those individuals, and that's a constant challenge, to be honest with you. We can't profess that we've solved it, but I think that orientation program is an important part in that. Quarterly staff meetings, quite an undertaking. We're 95 people here now on site, so organising quarterly staff meetings is a bit of an undertaking, but something that we instigated about 5 years ago when we started on a fairly big change in the business, which was deploy an ERP system. We made a commitment then that we would communicate the hell out of this, which meant quarterly meetings, and we've kept those going. And again, I think they're really important to keep people engaged in what the business is doing.
So to the person responsible for 95 souls within his business, which is, congratulations, by that's an incredible achievement in the small and medium-sized business world, Andy. There are very few people, roughly 3% in my opinion, that are knocking on the door of that scale. So that's great. Well done. What does management mean to you? What is effective management? How would you summarize effective management? Not so much the practicalities, but state the high end of the question. What does it mean?
That's an interesting question. I think a big part of it is about letting good people get on with the task and the job. Recognize that I certainly I'm not the smartest person in the room by any stretch of the imagination. I've got a great team of people here, and actually my job is to kind of not get in their way too much. Is to give them the autonomy and the responsibility, of course, to kind of just get on with what they think is best. Give them feedback and a bit of mentoring as we go along as best I can. I'm not sort of formally trained in management myself or anything. I kind of learned on the hoof. But it's certainly for me, I think, my role is more of sort of a guidance role rather than a sort of delivering specific tasks now, if that makes sense.
Facilitation almost, of highly capable people. It's an interesting subject, Andy, because we talk, I think a lot of people in the coaching environment and mentoring environment will talk about abdication versus delegation, and you mustn't abdicate because that's the equivalent of management by hope. So striking the balance between giving people space and autonomy whilst holding people accountable to their reason, their purpose. We're swapping businesses' resources for their time and talent. And striking the balance in that space is an interesting managerial complexity. Another great book for you, Andy, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Okay.
Right.
Have a stab at that one. You'll enjoy that book. It's a little bit Marmite in how it's delivered and how it's written, but you got to get past that. Interesting though. What I'm getting again in your answer there is a real insight into the culture in this business.
I think so. Somebody asked me this question the other day, actually, almost as sort of, could you describe the culture in the business in one word? And I sort of landed on a bit of an odd word, actually. I said warm.
Okay.
Which kind of, in reflection, I kind of wasn't sure whether that was a great choice or not, because it kind of feels like it's comfortable and cozy and everything. But actually, no, I kind of more thought of warm as being that sort of engaging and supportive element of it. The business still has sort of a sense of that family feel. My dad passed away 3 years ago. So yeah, I think and ultimately the culture in a business is made up of the people in it. Yeah, you can try and do all kinds of clever stuff and everything, but ultimately it's the sum of the people in the business, really, isn't it? And that obviously then plays very strongly to how you recruit and people you bring in the business at the end of the day. So
let me put it to you that your business, those people, every facet of your business, Andy, is a reflection of Andy Whittard and his father Lawrence and the whole ownership and leadership and management team. So we've talked a little bit about management. We haven't really talked about leadership. I don't need to, because leadership's shining through. It's warm. It's clear how you're leading this business, Andy. Ultimately, the way that we like to describe this is that the business does reflect the people that lead it and manage it. And often that's a moment for people when they have the mirror held up and they go, hang on a second here. So warts and all, the good things, the not so good things, the things that need to be developed, it's all a reflection of us. If we want to do more, we have to learn more. We have to challenge ourselves, don't we? Tell me about business planning. Tell me about business planning, Andy. How do you business plan? What are you guys doing you've got an operations director, there's your good south, there'll be no doubt other people in the senior leadership team. What are you doing for business planning?
So we do business planning. Are we great at it? No, not.
Okay.
It's almost a constantly evolving piece, actually, I think, in some ways. We endeavour to create a business plan for our year ahead. And that will be a process that the senior leadership team engage with and share in. And what we try to do is to then condense that down into sort of objectives and actions. So yeah, we have a nice little PowerPoint that is the headlines and all that kind of snazzy stuff and everything, which is good for sort of appearances. Sure. One thing I did learn some time back, which I copied instantly, was being able to produce a one-pager.
Yeah.
So basically take your business plan and basically put it on one page so that everybody in the business sees that one-pager.
Absolutely.
I think that's really quite powerful, because if nothing else, it makes you really condense it down and boil it down to the salient points. You get rid of all the fluff and the flowers, don't you? And get it really down to here's our revenue target. Let's be clear about that. And here's our profit target. Let's not be shy about talking about profit, for example. Something which my dad, God bless him, was never one to talk about. The financial matters were kept very
lot of business leadership. A lot of business leadership are doing that even today. Really.
Yeah. It's kind of odd, isn't it? Really, and I guess that again boils back to that kind of what's your purpose, what's your bigger goal, if you like. If truly your bigger goal and your ego is to be rich, then of course telling people about the money probably doesn't go hand in hand, really, does it?
And again, I mean, to build on what we're discussing, Andy, it would be completely clear that attitude or that approach from that human being, and let's be honest, there are people out there that run their businesses in that way, and that let's not judge them. Their business will reflect that.
Yep.
The culture and the situation will reflect that. So
Yep.
that it's all a reflection. Interesting point that you mentioned there about 1 year business planning. For me, that's worthy of just shining a light on for everybody, Andy, because for me, that's again an example of outstanding business management. Why? Because not enough businesses are outstanding. They are ordinary. And they're making a lot of mistakes. They're missing the opportunity to have a clear goal for the next year. If we have a goal for the next year, we can then break that down into a plan, can't we? We can break the plan up into different areas. We can then set key timelines on critical achievements and objectives, tasks, if you like, and then we can hold each other accountable to it. And of course, the latter one is the one that we don't really like the idea of in small business. We don't really like the idea of holding people accountable. So, goal, plan, time, accountability within that 12-month window is essential. So good to see that you're doing it. That's great. Now, we'll finish on one more question. And this is a tricky one. Often people need a little time to think. So take a few seconds, Andy. Well, in your opinion, there is no right and no wrong answer, by the way. Just in your opinion, what are the two most important facets of building a successful business, would you say? What would you say the two key facets are for our listeners today?
I think one's probably easy to put on the table there, and that is get the right people. Get the right the picture, the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
And try and get great people as well, actually. If you can find really good people in key roles, then you can instantly see how that sort of turbocharges a business or a function in a business.
Interesting.
You have to be prepared for the impact of that, because good people, great people want to make a difference.
They'll stretch the business.
They'll stretch the business. They'll challenge the business. They'll certainly challenge the status quo, if you like, the norm in a business. And
that's fascinating.
We sort of talked about 1 year business planning. We do also have a 5-year strategic plan for the business, and that's. We gave that a name. We called it Accelerate. We wanted to change the pace in the business. So we wanted to up our growth rate. We want to double the business in 5 years. And to do that, we've got to up the pace of change. And that's when great people really come to the fore, because they want to do that as well.
Can I stop you there for a second? This is the second time in the discussion today that you've mentioned the hiring of super talented people. Forgive me for saying, quote, people that are not quite quote verbatim, but similar. People that are better than me, that are more qualified than me.
Absolutely.
And Andy, that again, that's a super point for everybody to lock down. Because it takes great leadership to be able to set the vision of a 5-year doubling of the organization, a scaling of 100% over 5 years, and to employ great people to facilitate that, knowing that they are tactically hired because they are experts in a given genre. That requires strength of character and leadership, and I take my hat off to you. That's excellent stuff. So to summarize quickly before I hand it back to you, we've got 5-year vision setting and business planning. We've got 1 year detailed business planning as well. Excellent stuff. Andy, back to you. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah. So I think, as I say, getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, really important, really important. I think that's the first thing. There's the second thing. I think there's a multitude that you could probably choose there. We've touched on some of them.
Pick one.
I think you've got to know your numbers. That
Okay.
you've particularly when you're growing a business and you're
Yeah.
wanting to grow it and you're wanting to improve it, if you don't know your numbers,
Yeah.
so one of the great people you need in your business is a finance lead, without doubt.
Absolutely. Thank you.
But as a business leader, if I don't know all the intricate detail, but I can look at our P&L, our balance sheet, and understand it. I know what our numbers are. I know where we're up to month to date on sales revenue. Just the basics, to be honest with you. It's not difficult to do that, but if you don't know that, then you're going to struggle. And equally, if your financial data is out of date, and we used to suffer from this, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
If I think back to a time when, before I was MD, we didn't do monthly management accounts.
There you go. Okay.
We didn't know whether the business had made a profit or loss until year end, and probably several weeks after year end, to be honest with you. So you kind of, you're almost opening the proverbial chocolate box and going, are there any in there, or have they all gone already? Whereas now, with better systems, better people, better processes, we've got a pretty good idea of where the business is on a day-to-day basis, and we know what our month looks like within 7 working days a month end. We've got our P&L and balance sheet all done, bang, bang, bang. So yeah, you got to know your numbers. I think
everything, Andy, is a reflection of the people that own and run the business. So what I'm hearing there is absolutely first class in terms of understanding the reality of where you are as much as real time is possible. That requires people driving that systemization and that degree of management that understand the need for it and that can do it. And they require a leader that insists upon it. So it's all a reflection. This perfect answer. So I was expecting your second, you caught, not obviously caught me out, but you changed what I expected to hear. I thought you would say for the second part of the question that it would be something to do with the commercial focus. Commercial, because looking back at your track record through the business as you've evolved from your entry level to where you are today, obviously there was a lot of commercial exposure in there. And I just was betting in my mind that Andy would say something to do, but you did, but you wrapped it up with know your numbers. And it was an even better answer because it started with understanding the situation real time. And then, of course, you said, and because of that, I know where I am with my revenue target and where I am with my numbers versus that and so forth, the commercial. So fantastic. Andy, really, truly, great to talk to you and understand and help everybody listening to understand how you're taking this business forwards. I really, truly, it would be wonderful to meet again at some point to talk more about so that everybody can understand what perhaps a little more about the vision. That's an intriguing door that you open there around the 5-year goal. Really fantastic. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Alice, for the challenging questions as well, thought-provoking.
Well, that's what I'm here to do. So there you go. Andy, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining Business Spotlight today.